need this now? This is ridiculous. Good morning, everybody. I know. Took all my talkers. Good morning. Good morning. I hope I'm on and ready to go. They've got this mic on me. I hope we're good to go. I'm going to try. Communion series, the gospel in bread and wine. So I am praying we can get through it. So I made a mistake. This was originally supposed to be a 4-part series, but we don't have 4 Sundays of Sunday school, so I had to squish it down into 3. So I'm hoping that this will work, because next Sunday is 4th Sunday fellowship, and so then we'll be back here for the 29th. We'll finish up on the 29th, and then, of course, Easter's after that. So we are going from bread to the cup today, and we're going to be talking about from the bread, the crushing and the fire. We're going to finish the bread up, and then we're going to move to the cup. So last week, we, hang on, let me go back. And what the wheat go through to be broken down, thread, winnow, and it's going to become something entirely new. It's not working. It was on, but it's not working. All right. So we're finishing up the bread. His body has been broken. It's been separated. And now we're going into the crushing. And before wheat can become flour, it has to be crushed. Not just broken apart or separated, it has to be completely changed. It loses its shape, it loses its strength, and becomes something entirely new. When they laid the cross on Jesus' back, the people around him, didn't see the true weight. This was not just a man carrying a cross. He was carrying the weight of every sin. The burden of humanity's rebellion, the judgment for every failure. God, fully man, fully God, bearing what no human could carry. Surely he was borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. This is Isaiah 53, 4 and 5. He took up our pain, and he bore our suffering. He was carrying the full and final payment. Step by step, the crushing continues, and each moment was like a stone mill rolling over wheat and crushing him. By the time he reaches Golgotha, he's like flour. He's no longer recognizable. The cross had done its work, and the process from wheat to flour is complete. Can somebody get me Psalms 22:15? Psalm 22 and 15. Psalms 22 and 15. If somebody will get that. Read that for us, Sister Stacy. Uh-huh. Whew. The grain offering was a symbol of brokenness and readiness. Jesus was finished. The flour was ready. But now it's time to make the bread. So we need 2 ingredients to add to the flour to make it bread. Anybody want to guess what they are? Water. One other thing before we get to water. Think of the word covenant. Good, EJ. Salt. Salt. We did a whole salt covenant here. You have to have salt. And so she was going through this, and salt represents covenant, right? We've learned that recently. You shall season all your grain offerings with salt. You shall not let the salt of the covenant with your God be missing from your grain offering. With all your offerings you shall offer salt. Salt was an essential part of the grain offering, the bread that was made. Okay, this is Leviticus 2 and 13. Salt is a sign of covenant. It represents seal, confirmation, and preservation. It represents seal, confirmation, and preservation. And the moment that salt was added, was here. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Death. Death was the salt. Death was the salt that was added to the flour. It became the final seal, the final sacrifice. The fulfillment of everything that was spoken at that table, at that Last Supper. So the flour is finished, the salt's added, the covenant is sealed, but do we have bread yet? We do not have bread yet. Next ingredient that we need, which is absolutely essential, is the water. We have to have water. Water is what binds the flour together. So we have the flour, we have the salt, and now we have the water. At Calvary, water flows from the body of Christ, the first binding agent. Unleavened bread was pure, uncorrupted, broken, and shared. And at this Passover, the bread of life is hanging on the cross. The process is unfolding. The Roman law requires crucifixion victims to be dead before sundown. So if they hung somebody up on a cross, they had to be dead before sundown. So what they would do is they would go in and break their legs so they no longer could push themselves up to be able to get air to breathe. So they would go break their legs. This would speed the death process up. And so they did that to the thieves on the cross, but they get to Jesus and they stop. Let's look up John 19 and 33. Good morning. Welcome. We have coffee and goodies over here. Make yourself at home. This is our adult Sunday school class. But when they came to Jesus and saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. This is also prophesied in Psalms 34 and 20. He protects all his bones, not one of them will be broken. In the Passover lamb, when the Passover lamb was given, it was commanded that their legs could not be broken. The lamb had to have unbroken legs. And that is in Exodus 12 and 46 and Numbers 9 and 12. If you want to write that down, you can go read that also. Exodus 12:46 and Numbers 9 and 12. He commanded that no bones of the Passover lamb were to be broken. Mm-hmm. Yep, we talked about.
You use your legs to push yourself up to get another breath.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they break the legs, you lose the ability to push yourself up and you smother to death.
Right. So something was different. And to confirm his death, a soldier, verse 34, but one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and at once there came out blood and water. So this prophecy was fulfilled again in Zechariah 12 and 10. You can write that down, Zechariah 12 and 10. And Isaiah 53 and 5. And so they pierced his side, and it says immediately blood and water came out. This is in John 19:34. So the final ingredient has been added to this bread of life. He now has all the necessary ingredients. It's the final crushing of Jesus' humanity. Just as water binds bread together, the final outpouring sealed the new covenant. Every ingredient, every step is all the way through Jesus' final moments. Something else very interesting. So I told you that they had to be dead before sundown, right? Well, there's an urgency when Passover bread is being made. Once water is added to the flour and the salt, it's 18 minutes to get it baked, get it in the oven before leaven starts developing. And we know that Passover bread has to be unleavened bread, right? 18 minutes to get it there. So it has to be rushed into the oven as soon as the water is added. And there was an urgency at Calvary as well. If Jesus was not buried before sundown, then they would have to wait until after the Sabbath to bury him. Oh, that can't happen, right? Because we need him to rise again. Okay? So Joseph of Arimathea, he steps forward. He asks for the body of Jesus so he could bury him before sundown. Time was running out. So even in the process of baking bread, the urgency of when it needs to even get into the oven is still paralleled here in Jesus's death. And so it's still not bread yet, though. We have the loaf, right? But what do we got to do now? Before we can eat it, it has to be what? Before we can eat raw dough, it's got to be what? It's got to be baked, right? And so, listen, our talkers are not in here this morning, so y'all got to step up. Y'all got to step up. So every process of bread making ends in fire. Right? The bread's got to be baked. So for 3 days, the bread of life was where? Does anybody know what happened? He was in the fire. All right, Psalm 16 and 10. I should have typed all these scriptures out, but I did not. For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption. Sheol is another word for hell. Okay? Ephesians 4 and 9. In saying he ascended, what does it mean but that he had also descended into the lower regions, the earth? So he went down to hell. The tomb is sealed, but Jesus did not remain still. He wasn't just laying in there. He was storming the gates of hell. Storming the gates of hell. He was not bound. He was not silenced, nor was he finished. He was not. Colossians 2 and 15. Colossians 2 and 15 says, he disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in him. And then also you can look up 1 Corinthians 15 and 55. Jesus walked into the depths. He took the keys of death, hell, and the grave. They were no longer in the hands of darkness. That's what Jesus did while everybody thought he was laying there dead. And then on the third day, in the Bible times, who was responsible for baking bread? The women. Guess who gets to the tomb first? Is that not cool? The women were responsible for baking bread. And on the third day, it's the women that come to the tomb, not to make bread because the bread was already made, right? It was already completed. But they came with their spices and all the things that they were getting ready to take care for the body. So a tremor shook the earth. The stone was rolled away. They arrived with their spices, ready to take care of this body. And somebody get me Luke 24, 5 through 6. 24, 5 through 6. And if somebody else would get me 1 Corinthians 11 and 24, and hold on to that for just a second. 1 Corinthians 11, 24, somebody else would look that up. All right, who's got Luke 24? 5 through 6? Read it for us. He is not here. He is risen. And then, so the fire had done its work. The bread was ready. Process was complete. The fire endured, and victory was won. He is the bread of life. Somebody get me 1 Corinthians 11, 24. Who's got that? Anybody else? Go ahead, babe. Does that have a new meaning to y'all now? He literally became the bread of life. We say that all the time. He's the bread of life. He's the bread of life. Yeah. No, he literally went through the process of becoming the bread of life. awesome. Woo. And once again, he did nothing randomly, nothing without absolute purpose. Everything that he did was intentional and purposeful. So, the bread of life is risen, and now we eat. He said, body is broken, take and eat. Well, we're moving on to the cup. All right? So we finished the process of the bread. We've gone through that. And now we're going to the cup. When Jesus lifted the bread, he also lifted the cup. This was not just a meal. It was a covenant. This was a covenant meal. Covenants are sealed in blood. Covenants are sealed in blood. Wine was never just a drink in the kingdom. Wine was a part of worship. When it came to sacrifices for atonement, it was not only the blood of the lamb that was required, but wine had to be poured out alongside it. So when they were doing an atonement offering with the lamb, wine was to be poured out alongside it. Let's go to Numbers 15:5. And you shall offer with burnt offering or for the sacrifice a quarter of a hin of wine for the drink offering for each lamb. So every time a lamb was offered, wine had to be poured out. Not beside it, not after, but with it. The blood of the lamb and the wine were inseparable in God's design. The lamb atoned for the sin, and the wine sealed the offering. I don't know about y'all, but I was never taught that. We talk about sacrifices and you know, spotless lambs and, you know, all of that, but I did not know this about the wine. Or having read through it, I didn't make the connection. So this was the law of Moses. For years, people poured out these offerings without realizing what they were pointing to. And then the night before Jesus died, he lifted the cup. Matthew chapter 26, 27 to 28. Now, as they were eating, we've read this several times already, Jesus took bread, and after blessing it, he broke it, and he gave it to the disciples and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." 27, and he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink of it, all of you. Drink of it, all of you. For this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." What was the atonement sacrifice for? Push them back for how long? It was for the forgiveness of sins, but it just pushed them back. And what does he say here? Which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. It's, just like this. Just like this. Here it is, the lamb and the wine, the offering and the outpouring. The fulfillment of everything that they had been doing for generations. They had been doing this. The process of wine. Jesus here is not just speaking about wine. Grapes have to go through a process before they become wine, and we talked about the process of bread. We're going to talk a little bit about the process of wine. Jesus was about to undergo his own pressing. Every wine offering starts with a vineyard. Every grape that will be crushed grows in the hand of a vine dresser. What does he say here in John 15:1? I am the true vine. Jesus was not separate from the vineyard. He was rooted in it. He was tended by the Father, prepared for the offering. So the process of wine has already begun, and soon he's going to be poured out. So that first pressing, Jesus knew what was coming. Before any of it began, he began to pray. And going a little further, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. Here we are at Gethsemane, and we talked about last week what that meant. Does anybody remember? Olives, does that jot any memories? Oil press. Gethsemane means oil press. This was the pressing, and for the first time, we hear him wrestling with this. He's wrestling with this. Remember, he is all God, but he is all man too. Let's look at Luke 22 and 42. Verse 42 says, saying, Father, if you are willing, remove the cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. And so this is the same as Matthew 26 and 39. That's Luke's account there. He wrestled with what was about to be poured out. This was not about drinking from a cup. It was about being poured into it. At this moment, Jesus accepted the press. And Luke, the physician, records what was happening physically. Let's move on down to verse 44. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. This is the first time we see blood, and isn't it cool that Luke's the one that records that? He was a doctor. He was a physician. And from here forward, blood and wine become connected. Just as grapes are first pressed and the juice flows before fermentation becomes wine, Jesus began the process of being poured out. So, the cup, the suffering, the sin of humanity, the wrath of judgment. So we talked about that Gethsemane means oil press. And it was this place where olives were crushed and pressed. There was an actual vineyard there. The Garden of Gethsemane was an olive vineyard. And at that night, on this night where Jesus finds himself in the Garden of Gethsemane, it's not olives being pressed. It's the true vine. The one who would be poured out like wine, crushed, pressed, and poured. And the first drops had already begun to fall. So, grapes are pressed with there's two different ways, the treading press and the stone press. Now, because I had to combine both of these lessons into one, I didn't do a whole lot on both of those, but you're welcome to go and research the treading press and the stone press. It's two ways that grapes were crushed. They both had one goal. It was to break the grapes down completely so that nothing was withheld. And it happened again and again. So whether they were rolling it in the stone press or it was being treaded on, it was to break them down completely so that nothing was withheld from the grapes. And this begins in Gethsemane. And then we get to the whipping post. This is the part that we do not like to imagine. And this is where the contents were poured out in excess. Let's go over to John chapter 19. Go over to John chapter 19. Verse 1. Then Pilate took Jesus and flogged him. This was not an ordinary beating. It was designed to break a man open. It was designed to press the body until nothing was left inside. Just like the grapes, nothing withheld. And it was carried out with one of the most brutal instruments in history. Anybody want to tell me what it was? The cat of nine tails. It was made of leather straps, and at the end of each straps were sharp pieces of bone, metal hooks or nails, and weighted lead balls. The sharp pieces of bone were to cut him open, the hooks and nails were to rip, and the weighted lead balls were to beat him and make bruises and to beat the skin down so that it would tear. He was lashed 39 times with this. And they said in those days at 40 is when men usually die, at the 40th lash. And he was lashed 39 times. His flesh was torn. His body was struck down. And blood begins to flow freely from his body. Just as the wine press ensures that no juice is left inside of the grape, the intention of this scourging was that nothing remain inside. Nothing remain inside. And this was bitter. Says in Isaiah 50:6, I gave my back to those who strike, and my cheeks to those who pull out the beard. I hid not my face from disgrace and spitting. He said, I gave my back. He gave his body to be completely mutilated so that nothing remained the same. Nothing, he was unrecognizable. And so the blood continues to flow all the way up to Calvary. Blood is flowing all the way up to Calvary. Isaiah 53:5 says, by his wounds we are healed. I feel like we read that and we think about that so nonchalantly. By his wounds we are healed. That means it's already done. Healing has already been, the price has already been paid for your healing. And that doesn't just mean physical healings. That means healings emotionally. You do not have to walk around with wounded spirits. You don't have to walk around with trauma. Healing from anxiety and depression. Healing from, I don't care if you were diagnosed with something when you were a baby. He said, by his wounds we are healed. He did that for us. The stripes, just the whole situation, the mutilation was for us. And I think we just, he can heal everybody else, but he's not going to heal me. No, he said, by his wounds, we are healed. We are healed. And so I feel like, we need to take that and we need to walk in that authority, and we need to accept that Jesus did that for me. Not just for you, not just for them, but he did it for me. Wine does not come from whole grapes. It comes from broken ones. The breaking releases the liquid. The blood that would redeem us and cleanse us was being poured out like wine. The garden had begun the pressing, and this was the moment of the great outpouring. And still, there was more to come. We're not done yet. We are today, but we're not done yet. But the process of the bread of life is complete. The bread is ready, and the wine has been poured. How in the world did I get through all that to be done at 10:35? Woo! No. No, it's not. Um, I'm going to put it on that we didn't have all of our talkers in the room today. Whew, we even had to look those scriptures up. But, and we'll finish out the wine on the 29th. So next Sunday is Fellowship Sunday, and so we will not have a lesson. I think we will have some planned activities, if I can get the person who I asked to do it for me. But the process of what Jesus went through, I think we can get to we can be gripped by all of the things that happened to him. If you saw the Passion of the Christ and you had to cover your eyes, you couldn't watch those brutal parts. I think that grips us. I think that rips into us. I don't think anybody is unmoved by the thoughts of what Jesus went through on Calvary. I think what we, like I said earlier, what we don't grasp a hold of is the fact that it was for me. It was for me. And every struggle that I go through, it was for me. I want this to be in the forefront of our memories, because anytime we struggle with whatever we're going through, whatever situation we find ourselves in, sometimes it's easy to turn that around and, start wallowing in that and going into that poor, pitiful me, victim mentality. I just had a discussion with somebody recently, and they were going through a situation, and I told them, I said, well, instead of turning that into, oh, poor, pitiful me, I said, why don't you turn that around and say, okay, what is it I'm supposed to learn from this? What is it that I'm supposed to take from this? What is it that I need to change about myself that I can do better next time? And the bottom of it is yeah, we need to make those conscious decisions. But when it comes to things like anxiety, depression, sicknesses, whatever, past hurts, current hurts, things people are doing to you currently, those kinds of things, is we really, really, really need to always keep our eyes focused on him and not them or me. Because that's when we get wrapped up in that, and that's when we get in that vicious cycle of, poor, pitiful me. And so remembering what Jesus did and remembering that there was a purpose in every action, in every step that he took, there was a purpose. In every, from the moment of him being in the garden praying, God, please let this cup pass from me. Y'all, he knew what was coming. It'd be one thing if he was going into it blind and he really didn't understand what was going to happen next, but he knew. He knew what he was about to bear. He knew I don't know that he could have fully grasped how bad it would be. I don't know. I don't know if the human side, when you're like, oh God, I got to go through this procedure. I got to, and the doctor really doesn't tell you every little step. And then you come out going, God, I wish he would have told me that I was going to feel like this. And I think they do that on purpose, so that you don't really know how much pain you're going to be in after that tooth is pulled or after that surgery or whatever. And I don't know until he was actually in it. I'm sure he knew how bad it was going to be, as far as he knew he was going all the way to death, and he knew how he was going to die. But in the moment of the beating, did he know how painful, how horrible that was going to be with every time he was hit with that? And the fact that they took him all the way to 39 times. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the sin in the cup next. Mm-mm. Nope. Mhm. Mhm. Or what about having to carry the sin of the people doing it to you? Yeah. Mhm. 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 Yeah. Right. Mm. I can't. I don't think I even have the capacity to try to grasp the weight of that. Um, he did it for me because really my sin is just as weighty as a pedophile's sin, or my little whatever hang-ups, or my things that maybe are not punishable by the law are still something that could keep me out of heaven. And he bore it all. He bore every single one. And not only that, he did it not because he had to, he did it because of the love that he has for us. And then we sit back and we question, does he love me? Does God really care about? Does he care if I had the money to put gas in my car this week? Does God care about that? Does God care about does he care about my little trivial things? So, right, right, right. Mhm. Yes. Right. Right. Yeah. Mhm. Right. 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 So we will finish the wine up on the 29th, and um, well, we'll talk about it on the 29th. So, is there any questions? Anybody have any questions about any of this? We are right at 10:45. Anybody? Any questions or anything you want to say? Go ahead. Thank you. Thank you. This is coming from a book